Living at Cause with Michelle Saffin. The MKS Assists team acknowledges the traditional custodians of the lands and seas on which we live and work. We pay our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander ancestors and elders and acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. I particularly recognise the connection of traditional custodians to the Waurong land and waters on which this podcast is from. Always was, always will be. Legends, legendary podcast listeners, today is the day. Today is the day we finally discuss the big old motorbike accident that has caused multiple surgeries, a lot of rehab, lots of fun and games. Those watching on YouTube can see I'm a bit relaxed for this episode. You might hear the coffee cup, me drinking. I have a feeling today's podcast is going to take a while. So I'm prepared. I'm prepared to settle in and tell you the whole schmozzle of a story. Because it's a big one, but I have mentioned it that many times. You guys are a bit over hearing about it and not understanding it. I can tell. So let's dive right in. This has been going on for just over a year. Hence, it's going to take a minute to explain what went on. But the only logical way to start is with the accident, the said accident. To provide a little bit of context, I decided to gift my younger brother motorbike, like a motorbike course for his birthday, for his 21st, in Victoria. I don't know what it's like anywhere else, but in Victoria, you learn to ride a motorbike in like a Vic road, so like government approved course. And then through the course, you do your the license kind of pathway, because on a motorbike you can't have someone with you teaching you like you can have in a car. So you go through courses to make sure that you're competent enough, and you have to pass at each level to go on to the next step. So this was like the intro course to get our learner's permit. So we had to do like a written test on the day, some practical learning and some written learning as well. So it was 2 days of a course. And like I said, gifted it to my brother for his 21st, and then thought, why the fuck not? I want to go too. I want to see if this is fun. If it's not fun and I don't like it, then it doesn't matter. I just won't continue with the process of getting my license. But this is the way that I feel most comfortable to figuring it out. And then if I do love it, well, I'm already on the way to getting my learner's permit. Because you can do like other little courses, intro to motorbike and things like that, but they're not part of the official process. So then if I fell in love with it, they would be as well as. Also, I kind of wanted to go with my brother, and there was no doubt in anyone's mind that he would frigging love it. So I got him the one that was sort of on the way to the license. So we go along, everything's fine, get my license, my learner's permit. It takes us a little while to find a bike. We end up going halvesies in a brand new bike, a Royal Enfield for people that are interested. It's like the top of the size that I can get, but it also fits him. So both of us can use it like comfortably. He could have gone bigger, I could have gone smaller. It was in like the middle band. It was also powerful, so fast, but not too fast for the learner's permit. There's obviously a lot of rules about that. And it was the kind of bike look that we both liked. Great. We're ticking all the boxes. We buy the bike, he goes and picks it up. Everything's great. Then I'm a bit nervous. It's taken us a little while by this point to get the bike from the time of the course. I'm nervous about riding it, but it's at home with me. I've got some time off. My brother was going to come around. He delays. And I'm like, I'll just go out. Like, he's not going to come on the bike with me. He was just kind of going to be there as moral support. But I was like, you know what? I got this. Maybe it's better to do this alone because then I don't feel so much pressure. So go out on a little joyride just around my... Sorry, I just muted myself. We're back. I go for a joyride around home, little local area, go visit my mate. We have a chat. He checks out the bike. He's like, you're an idiot, but whatever, I support you. Get back on the bike, come home. Maybe 15, 20 minutes of riding. I stall a couple of times. I sort of tip off once at an intersection, but that's okay. I'm learning. It's been a while. I'm enjoying myself. I'm remembering how much I fucking love being on the motorbike. So that's good. All right. Here it comes, team. The big build up to the most embarrassing accident one could possibly have. I'm coming up my street, my home street, and I'm like, okay, I can park it in the street and my brother will have to come and pull it into the driveway. Do I do that and risk it being on the street, or do I come up the driveway? I'm umming and ahhing as I'm coming up the street and I go, nah, I've had fun. I feel good. I can get it up the driveway. I'll just take it slow. So I turn up the driveway and I go a bit fast. I go a bit faster than I needed to. I was worried about, our driveway is quite steep. I was worried about getting up the hill. Then the glove that I'm wearing on my left hand, which obviously has a block sort of in the palm, the block gets stuck between the handle and the lever, which is for the clutch. So basically, to disengage the motor, I need to pull this lever in. The block stops it. So the motor's not disengaging. I've come up a bit too quick. At this point, this is like, obviously I've thought about this and this is what happened, but this is within a second, I'm sure. In the panic that is ensuing of me realizing that I'm going too quick and the motor's not disengaging, I am too close now to the fence on the right-hand side of my driveway. My right foot gets dragged backwards and along the fence. I pulled out or broke about 10 to 15 fence palings, the little, like the brake that my foot is on, because on the motorbike, the brake is on the foot. Brake is on the foot. The brake is the foot. The brake... The brake lever is where your foot sits. That breaks off and my ankle has gone backwards and dragged along the fence. I'm sorry, some people say that's quite graphic. To me, it's not that graphic, but apologies. I probably should have said a trigger warning. Anyway, I won't go into great detail, but that's what happened effectively. I then tip off the bike. It turns off. Like, everything is safe, but I know something's happened to my ankle. There's a couple of little grazes, like one on my knee, one on my elbow, just where I've come off the bike. But it was kind of, at this point, by the time I fall off the bike, it was a slow motion. It was very controlled. It was a fall, but I sort of made it happen, to stop the bike and me from just continuing up the fence. At this point, I know I'm in pain. I'm in a lot of pain. So I scream out for my dad, who's working in his office, which is just down the driveway, the first room that you walk into down the drive. So he's close. Eventually he hears me. He comes out because he was in a meeting, but like he sort of heard commotion and then heard me calling out to him. So he came out. I'm very shaky. Obviously, like lots of adrenaline and all of that. By the time he comes out, I now can't feel any pain. So I'm kind of like, I don't know, maybe I'm okay, but maybe I'm not. And I said to him, look, I think you should get an ambulance because I really don't know what I've done. And I can tell that I had pain, but I didn't anymore, which basically means it's just the adrenaline. There is something that's going on. My mum's favourite story about my dad is how she came home to a screaming son who'd broken his arm and dad refused to take him to the hospital. For context, he doesn't like going to the hospital, and he didn't want to call an ambulance because he was like, that feels like it's going to cost money. So he got me a wheelie chair and wheeled me inside, and I hopped onto the couch and sat down and iced it. And that was what I did for the rest of the night. I didn't have any pain. I could not put any weight on it at all. I was using wheelie chairs to get around the house. And hopping. That was all that I could manage, but I didn't have any pain. So I thought, you know what? Maybe it's fine. Maybe it's just like a tendon, you know? Maybe I just twigged a muscle. Because surely, I'm 24, and I was 24 at the time of the accident. Actually, I would have been 23 at the time of the accident, and I had never broken a bone. So I was like, oh, well, if I've broken a bone, I would be in pain, right? Like, I'd be in agony. I would know if I'd broken a bone. That's surely how it works. Apparently not. Spoiler, apparently not. Anyway, mum comes home later that night. She's like, what have you done? I explain. And she's like, well, you saw a doctor, right? I'm like, oh, nah, Dad didn't want to call an ambulance and take me to the hospital, and I'm fine. Like, it doesn't hurt. And she's like, but you can't put any weight on it? I said, no. She said, right, okay. Book an appointment with the GP in the morning and we'll just go and get it checked out. I was like, yeah, look, you're right, because obviously not being able to walk on it, that's not a sustainable solution. So I book in for the GP first thing in the morning. I crawl upstairs to get to my bed that night because I can't put any weight on my leg, go to sleep. Wake up the next morning, crawl down the stairs, get back on the study wheelie chair. Mum has a look and goes, there's no bruising. I said, yeah, no, there's no bruising. That's a good sign, isn't it? And she said, no, that means it's broken. Mum's already over it. Mum is already over the whole situation. She knows what's happened. She knows she's going to have to look after me. She's well and truly over it. Before she even knew it happened, she was over it. Anyway, she takes me to the GP. We grab some crutches from the pharmacy on the way so that I can get around without needing a wheelie chair in the local suburbs. And we go to the GP. And the GP, you know, I take my crutches, I go into the room, says, what's happened? Oh, I've come off my motorbike, you know, I can't wait there, but I don't really have any pain. Okay. I think the GP put fingers on my ankle for about half a second. Half a second to a second. It was like a whoo. Immediately says, you need to go and get scans. Does not have any question in their mind that it's broken. I need scans. I need to go now and get those scans. So I'm thinking, right, not only does mum think it's broken, but also now a medical professional thinks it's broken. This might be a bit more dramatic than I thought, this little incident in the driveway. So we go, mum drives me to Cabrini Hospital and I go in to get scans. We're still peak COVID at this moment, so mum can't come in to any appointments with me or anything. She's just hanging out in the car waiting for me. Luckily, when I get to Cabrini, there's no one there. It's like so empty in the scans, so they get me in really quickly, do the scans. And again, I'm getting used to this reaction, but they look at it and go, right, yes, it's broken. They can't really give me a diagnosis because it's just the radiology team, but they're like, yeah, you need to go to the emergency department. I'm like, oh, great. This is really escalating. And I wasn't really prepared for it. So I call mum. She comes and picks me up and we have a discussion because I can stay at Cabrini and go to the emergency department there. It's $500 just to walk in the door because it's a private hospital. So I had asked the radiology team just at the scan place in the scan section in Cabrini, like, what do you think, where else can I go? And then had a discussion with mum. So at this point, I don't think I need to be in the private system, and I'm not really interested in paying just to sit in the emergency department. So we drive to Monash Hospital in Clayton. Sorry if you're not from Victoria and don't understand these references, but just to give some context about my little... it will become clear to those in Victoria why I'm talking about the suburbs, and I'll try and explain in a minute why it's important. So, we're down in Clayton now, Monash Hospital. Great. Emergency department. Again, hobble in there on my own, sit down, do all the forms, talk to the nurses. Takes a little while. They move me from like the emergency department, sort of like where you arrive, to what they call a clinic. So I'm back there, I'm waiting. Someone comes, picks me up eventually, and he's like, right, we actually don't have any ortho team here at Clayton. I'm like, okay. How can you not have ortho here? Everything's categorized, and so there's only ortho in Dandenong, not at Clayton. I'm like, great. So I've just wasted, I'd probably been waiting for an hour in this hospital. It's now the afternoon coming onto the evening. Like, I've been doing this thing the whole day. And they explained to me that no, it's fine. Like, they can talk to the ortho team at Dandenong. It just means that, if anything needs to happen, obviously it can't happen at Clayton Monash. But they'll sort of help me in terms of like, I've just come into the emergency department. So more scans, they sort of tape it up, not in like a hard cast, I guess in a soft cast. Like, they do put the bandages in water a little bit, and it's sort of semi-hard, but the outside is soft. So it's not an actual cast. I'm not sure what they call it when they do it like that. But yeah, so he does that. They talk to the ortho teams, a lot of backwards and forwards. I'm kind of just chilling a lot of the time. And then he comes back, says, right, we've taped you up. They're going to look at the scans. There's nothing that we need to do now, but there'll be a follow-up process. I'm like, okay, no worries. At this point, I really just want to be home, to be honest. So, call mum. She went home because we knew it was going to take a while. She came back, picked me up. I've got my taped up foot. I've got my crutches from the chemist. Go home. There's no real indication of what's gone on or what might happen, just that like there will be follow-up from the ortho team who are based in Dandenong. This is Saturday. Sunday, obviously nothing really happens. Monday, I get a call from the hospital. And they're like, okay, you went into the emergency department. We've had a look at your scans. We want you to come in and have an appointment with the ortho team in Dandenong to talk about it. I'm like, yeah, that makes total sense. That's fine. This is Monday morning. So I'm like, cool. Schedule it in to happen on the Wednesday morning. They're like, that's when we've got availability. Sure. No worries. I can get around because I've got the crutches, I've got the bandage on, so I'm not too worried. It's a bit difficult not knowing what's going on, but it is what it is. There are people who are going through a lot more than me. So I'm happy to go with the flow of the process at this point. Later on, the flow of the process was a bit frustrating, but at this point, everything's sort of, I'm in the it is what it is phase of my ankle journey. So they call me, that's fine. I'm able to work from home, super privileged, was still working in an office job, but they let me work from home until I sort of figured out what was going on with the ankle. So I'm working from home. I've got my appointment booked. It was probably 3 hours later, get another call from the hospital. Okay, so we've just had a look at your scans, and I'm like, yeah, I've had this conversation. I'm coming in for an appointment. Actually, you need to come in for surgery. what you've got. It's a spiral fracture. They're very unstable. If something to happen and it would collapse, you're going to have significant issues. We need to operate. No appointment. You'll just come in for surgery, admission Wednesday morning. I'm like, shit. Me initially thinking, I've just torn a muscle. All of a sudden, I've got my first broken bone. It's unstable and it needs surgery. A surgery that will need an overnight admission at hospital. And I've got just over 24 hours to mentally prepare myself for all of that. So it was full on. So immediately I'm in Virgo, organize the shit out of this mode. I'm like, right, message work, sort that out, figure out if I'm going to have to pay for this, health insurance, sort all that out. At this point, I believe I had Googled the TAC process to see if I was eligible. But now I know that I need a police report to sort of, for TAC, you have to submit a police report to then get a TAC claim. So this is now urgent that I get this done because I'm going into hospital and I'll need a claim number to claim my operation so that I don't have to pay for it. So I'm going in full organization mode. And I basically stay in that hectic organization energy until the surgery. Partly because there was a lot to organize and partly because I think it was just a bit of a distraction from the fact that I was about to have surgery, which was scary and overwhelming and unexpected and all of the things. And surprisingly, because I wasn't in any pain, obviously I couldn't walk, right? So that's not normal. I could walk and then I couldn't walk, but I wasn't in pain all of the time. So it was quite a mental thing to say, this is emergent. Effectively, you need emergency surgery. And yet I was like, but I'm fine. I'm not in any pain. And I didn't expect that. I had just assumed that if it was bad, I would be in pain. So I think sort of it was quite a surprise to then need emergent surgery because my pain levels were basically nothing aside from the fact that I couldn't walk. So yeah, that probably sounds a bit illogical now, but that's just where I was at the time. And this is all happening very fast. I come off the bike on the Friday afternoon and they're saying Wednesday morning emergent surgery. There's not a lot of time to process. So that's where we get to. And I go in on the Wednesday morning for surgery. I've organized everything. And it's I think I had to be there at 8 a.m. admission time in Dandenong, which is had to allow about 30, 40 minutes from home. So Mum drives me down to the hospital. Again, COVID, can't have anyone there. So I hobble in on my own. They give me a wheelchair so that I can carry my suitcase and get into where I need to be. They do the admission process. The nurses were so lovely. Got me in a gown, and then because I'm a plus size, according to Australia, podcast episode for another day, but plus size, the gown wasn't amazing, and also they sort of predicted that I might be there for a while, so they gave me one to put on backwards as well. So I had 2 surgical gowns on, so I was fully covered up. And then that way, when I needed to go to the bathroom, I wasn't flashing the whole floor, which was nice because people that are there, they were all waiting for ortho surgery. So some of them, well, not some of them, everyone was fine and active and awake. It's not like everyone was asleep or something. I would have really flashed the hell out of everyone, including a young boy who'd had a sporting injury next to me in the bed, and super hot tradie who obviously cut himself with a power tool or something because he came in straight from the ED. So yeah, I was very grateful for the double gown episode from the nurses. But it's 8 a.m. admission. I'm supposed to be having surgery in the morning, they said. They don't give you a time because obviously stuff happens. I'm supposed to have surgery in the morning. At one point, the surgeon comes out maybe 2 hours after my admission and sort of tears open what they did in the ED in terms of the like soft cast to have a look. He just effectively looks for bruising, sees there isn't any, goes, right, yep, I'll come talk to you later before surgery. Might be about an hour. I'm like, sweet, I'll see you later. Didn't ask my questions. He was obviously in a rush, but I was like, oh, I'm going to see him later anyway, so it's fine. Spoiler alert, I did not see the surgeon again, ever. So anyway, he goes off. The nurses take one look at the shredded mess that he's made of my cast and tape it back up again. And I say, oh, it's fine. Like, you don't need to worry about it. He's going to come back anyway. And I think maybe the nurses thought there's no way in hell he's coming back, but they didn't say that. They just said, look, we'll tape it up. If he needs to come back, he can cut it open again. You can't have it like that. You won't be able to go to the bathroom with it like that. You know, like it's falling apart. There's stuffing coming out of it. It's a mess. They tape it back up. I go back to reading. Then I end up opening up my colouring. Then I've got some music playing, like time is going on and on and on. And at this point, I am fucking starving. I have not eaten since 10 p.m. the previous night, and it is now late afternoon. I was not happy. I was so hungry. Yeah, couldn't even have water. I was struggling. Anyway, it is what it is. Obviously, stuff had come up for them. Eventually, someone comes out to get me. It's about 5:30, I think, at this point. Someone comes out to get me. I think one of the most frustrating parts of this part of the story is that the person who came to get me was like, if you are not ready in the next 30 seconds, they will take someone else to surgery. Honey, I've been waiting all day for you. I'm hungry. Of course I settled in. I've been here like all day, longer than a working day. I've been here since 8 a.m. Of course my stuff's kind of everywhere. Anyway, I managed to get one text message off because I was in the middle of a conversation with a girlfriend. I don't get time to message anyone else about the fact that I'm about to go in. I just quickly sent a message to this girlfriend saying I'm going in because we were mid-conversation. And before I went to hospital, I'd given like my close friends' mum and dad's number, and so they were all in touch just in case. So I was like, well, if the parents are really worried, they can contact and check with them and they'll figure it out. So it was a bit stressful, is what I'm saying. It was a bit of a stressful start to the bit of the day that is the actual surgery, which is not ideal given the fact that I was already anxious about going into surgery for the first time. But apparently, you know, I might have missed my spot. So I threw my shit in my bag, like half did up the zip. I was like, well, you're going to have to deal with that because I obviously do not have time to deal with this. And they wheeled my bed through to like the surgery area and then holding I get my IV put into my hand. It was extremely painful. I did not realize it was going to hurt that much. So that wasn't so fun. And then they took me in for surgery. They just about strangled me with the surgical gowns because they put me, like transitioned me from the bed up onto the surgical table without realizing that I had two gowns on. So then they had to untie all the knots and get that out. And at this point, you don't really feel human anymore. Like, you definitely feel like you're just, an email they have to send off if I was in an office job, but instead they're surgeons. So they're kind of just going through the motions. I'm getting quite panicky. By the time they put the oxygen mask on me, and tell me to count backwards, I'm basically hyperventilating. I'm well on the way to a panic attack. Luckily, the drugs work quick enough that it doesn't happen, but it was a very stressful experience. And so later, as you already know, I have a second surgery. And so there was a lot more stress for the second surgery because I knew how uncomfortable and the process feels. Whereas for this first surgery, I went in blind. I had no idea. I was like, oh, it'll all be fine and everyone will be lovely. And people were lovely, but they were just busy and overworked, and we're in the middle of the pandemic. Obviously, it's not an ideal time to be having surgery. So I don't blame any individuals, just the system isn't ideal, especially because, yes, I'm an adult and I was fine to be by myself, but I didn't have a support person. So that does make it a bit more stressful, in my opinion, going through the process. I wake up, I'm in agony. Worst part of the process by far is waking up in recovery. They get drugs under control, take me back to my room. The nurse comes and finds me because mum's on the phone. She hasn't heard from me for hours. Like, she assumed that I went in for surgery, but she was trying to get in touch. I ended up calling her on the mobile while the nurse is trying to find me in the hospital. So I talked to mum. I'm still very out of it with all the drugs, but, you know, doing my best. Mum tells me, because obviously, spoiler alert, once they got my pain under control, what happens? I remember how fucking hungry I am. So mum tells me that because now I think it must have been 7:30 at this point by the time I've gone through surgery and everything. It was probably nearly 8 by the time I'm talking to mum. And I just assumed that they would bring me dinner because I hadn't eaten. And she said, no, they won't. Like, you need to ask for dinner. So then I had a very funny conversation with the night nurse who did not want to feed me. He did not want me to eat. It was like, but you might feel a bit sick. I'm like, I just feel hungry. And I get it. He didn't want me to be going to the toilet all night. He didn't want me to feel unwell and be sick. But I was just really hungry and really thirsty. So scammed some sandwiches and some water and ate and drank. And yeah, I was so hungry. And I didn't get any nausea, which is lucky. Obviously, I didn't have a reaction in that way to the anaesthetic. So that was good. So yeah, that's probably the key takeaways. I guess the last thing about the surgery journey, the surgery process the first time, is that they came around in the morning to discharge me after I'd seen the physio team, had breakfast, blah, blah, blah. All of that happens, and then they're like, right, you're ready to be discharged. Have you organised a lift? How are you getting home? And I'm like, well, that's fine. I'm happy to go home and my lift is on their way, but no one has told me what happened in my surgery. I'm not going to leave until you tell me what happened. No one told me. I mean, they said it went fine in recovery. Great. A, high as fuck. B, fine can mean a lot of things. I'm not dead. That could be fine. So I'm like, I need to speak to someone. I want to know what happened in my surgery. I would rather talk to the surgeon who said he was going to come and visit me before surgery and didn't, who I don't recall visiting me in recovery. It's actually law that they come and speak to in recovery, but I was in a lot of pain and there was a long time before they got the meds to kind of manage that. So I don't even remember him visiting. I have no idea what's happened. I'm in a cast. That's all I really know. So then eventually, after asking 3 different people to kind of sort that out for me while they're trying to discharge me, someone comes along and they're like, hi, they said you need to speak to a doctor. And I'm like, yes. Pardon me. I would like to know what happened in my surgery. And they're like, okay, I wasn't in your surgery. I'm like, okay, good start. Can you get someone who's in my surgery? No. I'll go and read the surgery report. I'll come and tell you what happened. They go, they read the surgery report. It's not very clear. They sort of translate it the best that they can. At this point, I'm tired of advocating for myself. They've told me what happened in surgery enough, and I figure I'll get the reports, send them to my physio, and then they'll be able to decipher it for me. So they did their best, but no one from the surgery came and spoke to me, so it was a bit hard to figure out what had gone on. So I go home. The process from here is me sitting on the couch with my leg up for 4 to 6 weeks in a cast. Again, so blessed that I was working in a job that I could do from home. So I took a week off for the pain to settle and just to get used to life, and then went back to working with my leg up on the couch. Went back to the hospital, transitioned, got scans, transitioned from cast to moon boot. According to the surgeons, I could have just started putting weight on that pretty quick. But I have a physio and I trusted him. So all of my rehab, I listened to him and not the hospital/surgery team, who basically just tell you can start running really quickly. And as you'll hear the rest of this podcast, there was a lot of complications that happened for me. So it wasn't like I was running a marathon 3 months after my accident. So we swapped to a moon boot, and at this point, 3 months is kind of like the nominal period that they're saying for me to get back to walking unassisted. Once you go through all the sort of steps of moon boot, crutches, no crutches, moon boot only, rah, 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 rah. I get permission to get rid of the moon boot then another 4 to 6 weeks later. I don't really remember the timelines on this, and it's not super important. They give me permission to get rid of the moon boot. Literally they said, oh, you could just get rid of it today. And my physio and I were still messing around with being on and off crutches. So it's interesting. This is one of the things that I've sort of discovered through this process, is that what the team at the hospital say, and then what my physio has said in terms of long-term sustainable recovery is quite different. So interesting to note. But at that appointment, we have a discussion about the pin. So people get grossed out. I'm not going to go into it, but effectively there are quite a few bits of metal in my ankle. One of them is between the two main bones in the ankle. And they say you can get it out or you can keep it in. And in Australia, there is no set thing that is done. Some people leave it in, some people take it out. They only have to take it out if it breaks badly. Sometimes it can break and you can leave it in. If it breaks badly, then it comes out. Every doctor gives me a different opinion. It apparently depends. In another country, they would say definitely leave it in. In a different country, they might say definitely take it out. Some people say, well, because you're young, we'll take it out. If I was older, maybe they would just leave it in. Rah. Everyone's got a different opinion. I do some research, talk to the doctors, and decide that I would like the pin to come out. That is my choice because we're in Australia. So they say, right, no worries. We will put you on the public list to have that one bit of metal removed. The rest will stay in. But just that one can sometimes hinder your mobility. Amazing. Great. I'm on the public list. As you may recall, it would have been July, August, probably September 2020. So at this point, elective surgeries, which this is because it's not life-threatening, are put on hold again and again and again. The lists are getting longer and longer and longer. So at the time that they put me on the list, it would have only been, they said 1 to 2 months, we'll get you in, we'll get that screw out. It's like a 15-minute procedure. You do have to go under anesthetic, obviously, but it's very quick. You don't have to stay overnight. So I'm on the public list and I'm thinking it's going to be 1 to 2 months. that never happened. I chose, because of what happens later, I choose. But basically, I took myself off the public list probably nearly 12 months after the accident. And at that time, they were calling me to see if I still wanted the surgery because the position on the list was so low and it was going to be so much longer until I got in. So if I was still on the public list, there's no way that I would have had the surgery yet. The reason I went off the list, it will become clear. But yes, just for some context, this quick surgery that was going to be in 1 to 2 months, it never happened because the public system became so overwhelmed. So in the end, I moved private and changed some other things as well. So we'll go into that. But that's kind of where I'm at. Things rehab-wise are slow. They are slow, but I sort of feel like they're happening. It just seems that like what your surgeon thinks about how rehab works and what the physio thinks are at odds. So I'm happy to just keep working on the rehab with the physio. I want sustainable recovery. So I'm thinking everything's fine. And then it's maybe 5 months after surgery. I'm supposed to be fine at 3 months. It's 5 months after surgery and I'm still in a lot of pain. I'm not on any pain meds. Occasionally I'm taking like Panadol and Nurofen, but most of the time there's no medication, but I'm still in pain. Now, given there was the possibility or the promise of recovery after 3 months, at 5 months my physio is now thinking this is not a normal progression of recovery. By 6 months, it's very clear that I have stagnated and there is no recovery happening in terms of like, we can't get my pain under control. So every time the pain gets a bit under control and we do a little bit more, the pain inflames and literally my ankle would swell up, and then we'd have to stop, go back. So we do this dance, we try all sorts of different things in rehab with the physio. Nothing is really working. I then move to a specialist in the same organisation that my physio is at to speak to them about what they think. They're like, A, definitely not normal. You should not have pain like this anymore. B, I don't know why you have pain. I can't see anything on the scans. You need to go to an orthopedic specialist to talk about options. Great. I stacked it in my driveway. I stacked in my driveway and I'm still in pain from this surgery. This is not ideal. There's a lot of mental stuff that's going on with all of this. It was hard, basically. Maybe I'll go into that sort of at the end of the story, but I'll keep with the timeline for now, but it was difficult. So I then go to a public specialist. Thankfully, gratefully, someone who does TAC, so I'm not paying for this appointment. I wait, another month and a half to get in to see them. They assess. They touch all around my ankle and they're like, you are in so much pain. I can see that you're in so much pain. That's not normal. We need to have a look at why. He's assessed all the scans, the surgical reports, blah, 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 and says, yes, this other specialist in physio are right. There's no real glaringly obvious reason as to why you are in pain, but clearly you are. So your body is not recovering as we would expect it to. He also said, it should have been like a 3-month recovery. I explained that I had opted to want the pin out and that I was still on the list in the public system to have that pin out. And he said, yes, that could be the problem, but it's unlikely that that is really causing this much pain. As per my comments above, some people have that pin in for their whole lives and they don't even notice. So it's unlikely that just having that pin out was going to solve the problems. So what we did was went through a period of really focusing on the inflammation that was happening. Like I said, my ankle was swelling up quite large, even all this time after the surgery. So we focused on really getting that inflammation down. I went on really strong anti-inflammatory drugs and went back to fully like RICE, the first aid acronym, focusing on RICE. So it was full RICE, full RICE for everything, and those really strong anti-inflammatory drugs. Did all of that, changed up my rehab to reflect that. I would say, they say on a scale of 1 to 10, I can't remember my pain levels, but I probably had like a 15% reduction in pain. I went from having pain 100% of the time to not having pain at rest as much. But if I'd done a lot of walking, and when I say walking, I was still sort of on and off crutches, but went to the point where I wouldn't have pain 100% of the time. I would probably have pain any time I was doing anything with the ankle, and then that would stay until it went down. But I didn't have pain. For example, when I got up in the morning, the pain wasn't there. So that was like the drug did something and the inflammation physically went down, but still really not great. So we go back to the surgeon, and I am very grateful that he wasn't the kind of surgeon who saw me and was like, yeah, let's cut you open. We did try other processes, but he saw me again. By now it's been probably 9 months, I think. It's been 9, maybe even 10 months since the accident, and I'm still in a lot of pain. So clearly things are not right. We can't work out why. We need to have a second surgery. So I discussed my surgical options with this specialist, and we decide that the best course of action is to remove all of the metal that's in my ankle, so that pin that was scheduled to come out at some point anyway, and all the rest of the metal, and then do what's called an arthroscopy, which is using a camera to have a look at what's going on in there, and then whatever they discover, they'll try and address while they're in there. So I'm very anxious about this surgery because I know what having surgery is like. I know that it really hurts when you wake up. I know that it really hurts to get an IV. I know that you really have to advocate for yourself because people kind of just ignore you a little bit when you're in hospital. The anticipation is a lot higher this time, and it's scheduled for like 1 to 2 months away. So at least the other time, yes, it was rushed because it was semi-emergent, but I didn't have time to stress. Basically, I was just organising my life, and then boom, I was there having surgery. Anyway, so I try and put it out of my mind, just do my rehab. My physio and I go into really focusing on becoming the best possible position to go into surgery so that when I come out of surgery, I bounce back. That's the aim. Surgery is 2 or 3 weeks away, I think, 2.5, 3 weeks away when Mum brings COVID home from work. Thanks, Mum. She works in a school. It was inevitable. But I think, okay, it's all right because I can get COVID, recover from COVID, and still be fine for surgery. So really, she's brought it home kind of at the ideal time. Sure enough, Dad and I get COVID from Mum, do our isolation. I was very tired, but I didn't have massive respiratory symptoms. So I have a return of my childhood asthma that hasn't gone away again since COVID, but I don't have massive respiratory issues beyond the asthma. I'm just very tired. About 3 days before the scheduled surgery, they send me a confirmation email with a reminder that I need to return a negative RAT before the surgery. So on the morning of the surgery, negative RAT. Fine. I'm discussing with a friend. I'm like, some people are returning negative RATs a long time after they've had COVID. And for me, it's not really been a long time. It's only really been 2 weeks since I had COVID. Can't get RATs because there's no RATs available. So can't preemptively test. So I just email the hospital and I say, look, I had COVID on, tested positive this date with a PCR. I feel fine. What if I return a negative RAT the day of the surgery? Will you still operate? given it's not that I've got fresh COVID, it's just like leftover. Leftover COVID. Leftovers in the fridge, if you will. Just to cover my bases, I want to prepare for what's going to happen if that does happen. And they email back and say, you can't have surgery for 8 weeks because you've had COVID. Can you tell that I fucking lost my mind? Mum came home. She felt a little bit sick. We didn't do anything about it because I knew that I was probably going to get COVID anyway. She stayed away as much as she could, but really we didn't isolate her. We all still use the same kitchen. We were not as careful as we could have been because I thought I just had to return a negative rat. Now they've cancelled my surgery because I had COVID. It's not 8 weeks delayed because, the surgeon's not available. Got to fit it in with his holiday that he's going on. So my surgery gets moved about 11 or 12 weeks. I was very angry. Can you tell? Still a little bit angry. I may still have got COVID, but I didn't do all that I could have to avoid it. And there was no indication that this was going to be an issue until literally 3 days before the scheduled surgery. I'd taken the time off work. I'd planned events, or not planned events for the time afterwards. Yeah, it was tough. It was really, really tough. And it wasn't just a short delay, nearly. It was going to take the surgery from 10 or 11 months after to nearly 13 months after the accident. And mentally, that was a really hard thing to be like, this has been going on for 12 months. Not only have I been in pain for 12 months, but I've been doing this rehab thing for 12 months. I've done the mental stuff for 12 months. It was a lot for me to process internally. So surgery gets delayed. It takes a couple of days. We eventually find a date that they can reschedule the surgery. I put events back in my calendar and take them out of my calendar in 12 weeks' time, move around work, all the things are happening. Eventually, we go in for surgery number 2. Very different experience. I'm in a private hospital this time. I have a private room. The nurse comes to me and speaks to me about everything. It just feels a lot less rushed. And yeah, I'm in a private space, so very different to the public system where intake happened in a huge hall style room, and then I slept overnight in a room just with curtain partitions with 6 other people. So very different experience in the private system. Did the surgeon talk to me about the surgery at the time? No. So not so different. Again, I remember him this time. He did speak to me in recovery, and I remember that he was there. No clue what he said. Was so high on drugs and still in pain. So yeah, I just had to wait to find out what happened. The nurse called him to ask questions that I had asked her to ask him. The answers weren't really clear. I specifically asked if there were 2 scars or 1, 2 entry points or 1. She said 1. There were 2, which I figured out when I took my own bandages off. Yeah, so it's not a perfect world. It's not a perfect system, but it was a nicer experience being in a private hospital. There's no doubt. Still didn't have anyone with me because of COVID, but I think I was a bit more prepared to advocate for myself, and I'd had time to prepare mentally a bit better because for one, I'd been rescheduled twice, but yeah, I just knew what was happening and it wasn't an emergency situation. So that's where we're at. I've had surgery number 2. I'm back in rehab. Fuck, it's frustrating. 12 months of rehab only to have a second surgery and go right back to where I was. It's really hard. It's mentally extremely draining. It was harder this time because I was on crutches even though I could walk. So mentally staying on the crutches was really difficult, and for a lot of times I didn't when I should have. I just want to run and ski and jump and do these things, which I could do, but it would be detrimental to the long-term recovery. So I just have to keep thinking and focusing on long-term what I want to be able to do. But it is a challenge. And obviously I've been in pain for over 12 months from the ankle. So there is a lot of challenges with like assessing my pain and being driven by my pain, which is all great things that my physio says. And I look at him like, yeah, but I've been in pain for a year with this ankle, let alone the fact that I have chronic back pain and I'm in pain my whole life. So it is quite hard to be driven by pain when I'm kind of just used to ignoring it. But yeah, that is the big ass fucking story about my ankle. I stacked it in the driveway and now I've spent over a year dealing with surgeries and rehab and recovery. Yeah, I don't think I really want to share anything else. This is probably going to be the longest episode that I've ever posted because it's such a drama, but I talk about it all the time because it has been such a significant part of the last year. And so I wanted you to understand what really happened. And yeah, that's the story. If you have questions, jump into my Instagram DM so we can have a chat about my hilarious accident. I would love to hear what stupid accident you've had. I think that would make me feel a lot better. Because yeah, I literally stacked it in the driveway and 12 months later, I'm still in fucking rehab. So please share with me your stupid accident story. It would make me giggle a little bit and it would make this process a little bit more fun, which would be lovely. Otherwise, all the best living at Cause until next time. Living at Cause is presented by Michelle Saffin and produced by MKS Assists. Follow her on Instagram at MKS Assists and don't forget to subscribe on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Video recordings can now be found on YouTube at MKS Assists. Subscribe for how-to videos and notifications of the latest podcast recording.